Welcome, everybody. This is Football Talk. Thanks for tuning in. And of course, we are heading into championship weekend. So we will chat a little bit about those and, of course, take a look at the Seahawks and the fact that there's one of only two teams left that don't have a head coach and some of the concerns that we have with the coaches that are on the list. Obviously, some of those coaches have found jobs, so ones that we were going to be looking at may not be an option anymore. And of course, if you're watching this show, odds are you're in the Pacific Northwest. And if that's true, come out for the second game. We're going to be at Buffalo Wild Wings and watching some football. So come out for the Lions-Niners game, the Linwood Wild Wings. Be fun to, meet you guys that are watching. And of course, my friends that are watching, definitely come out as well. So other than that, let's go ahead and get rolling here. I was going to talk about some of the free agents, and we definitely will do some of that. But there's movement around the league. One of the guys that were on the list for the Seahawks has now taken the job in Atlanta in the defensive coordinator for the Rams. So they didn't go the Belichick route. Not that that's a huge shock. Sports Illustrated came out this morning basically outlining kind of what I thought the issue would be with Belichick going to Atlanta. He's sort of a short-term answer wherever he goes, right? At the end of the day, he's probably, if he is going to coach, maybe 5 years, right? That has to be kind of your expectation there. And if that's the case, he really wants to develop a culture. I think Pete Carroll will run into the same issue, is they're both old enough at this point and their cultures take a little bit of time to, really kind of grab hold. Do they have enough time to create the culture and then win with it? And honestly, I feel like the answer is probably no. So you may have a hard time finding a home for a Pete Carroll or a Bill Belichick. So at this point, they went a different route. They ended up bringing in Raheem Morris from the Rams. Not that they did anything spectacular, but that Rams defense was solid. He should be able to do some pretty good things with Atlanta there. So if you're an Atlanta fan, if they go and draft a quarterback, they have a decent coach. It'll be interesting to see what it is they do. Obviously, they have an easier division to win as well. And yeah, Rob, absolutely. He does want too much power. And that's definitely going to be part of it. But at the same time, you're only going to get a 5-year window with him. So it's funny. There's been some local writers that have, kind of outlined it's a long shot, but Belichick could come here. I really don't see that being a thing. They want to preserve the culture that they have. That's something that Jody Allen and John Schneider have both alluded to. And there's no way that that Bill Belichick checks that box for the Seahawks. So Belichick is definitely not coming here. That would be one of the weirdest signings if they do. But that being said, some of the ones that they put out there, I'm not excited about. And let me bring up this list that had either interviews yesterday, today. Now, some of these are second interviews, which means there is some interest there. And one of them, obviously, is Dan Quinn. Naturally, Dan Quinn is an easy fit, right? He was one of Pete Carroll's guys. It's obviously a culture match because he's been here before. So he's a very easy transition piece. I don't necessarily love it. I don't like where his teams have let down. It's been key moments. He's had good defenses, but then when it matters, they've come up short. Now, obviously, the Super Bowl in Atlanta, there was a multitude of issues. But then you look at the Cowboys getting the brakes beat off them in the playoffs against Green Bay. Obviously, that is not a great look. But statistically, they had a good defense, and the teams have performed fairly well. So it's not that he couldn't come in and win games. I think absolutely he could. I just don't know that it would necessarily get you any further than what is happening, what was happening with Pete Carroll at the end. So I think you would still be a fringe playoff team, but probably not truly competing. So, that would be a real question bringing Dan Quinn in. But then when you look at the other people that they've given second interviews to, this is where it's very concerning. So we're going to have offensive coach Mike Kafka, who was the OC for the Giants. And they were bottom 5 in every statistical category, basically. So I would not be excited about this as the future of the Seahawks. This definitely feels like a downgrade from what Pete Carroll is. I mean, the thing is if you're moving on from Pete, you have to feel like this is going to be something to elevate, right? Like something to move you forward. Otherwise, you just got rid of a Hall of Fame coach for no reason. Like if you're going to get rid of a Hall of Fame coach and then you go get a guy that is leaving a team that was bottom 5 in everything, that doesn't inspire confidence. At that point, you're wondering, why did you move on? So hopefully that one doesn't come through. They have interviewed him twice though. So man, as a fan, really, even as an analyst, this one really makes no sense to me. Hopefully that's not the route they go. And then of course they go with a second round of interviews with the Raiders DC, Patrick Graham. Also a defensive unit that did not perform particularly well. So that one doesn't inspire a ton of confidence either. It's again, I feel like for some reason with the amount of good coaches that are out there, I don't know why the Seahawks look like they're kind of trudging the bottom of a pond here. I understand these guys are available and you want to explore any potential, that may be out there, but you also kind of want to look at the body of work, right? I mean, at least with Dan Quinn, he made it to a Super Bowl. He's been on double-digit winning teams. They've had top-ranked defenses. Those at least kind of make sense, right? So when you start looking at a Kafka or a Graham, like neither of those, it make you feel good about what it is they're trying to do. So then continuing on, so Dan Quinn, they were going to bring back Raheem Morris. Obviously, that one falls off the list because he is now hired down there with Atlanta. So great for Morris. Hope he can maximize his opportunity down there. But, it's not like I saw anything out of the Rams that made me feel great about that particular appointment had he been coming to Seattle. So, I'm not sad to see him drift away. And then in case Kafka and Graham weren't the worst potential options, they're also going to give a second interview to the Panthers DC, Avero, tomorrow. So that is one that is going to be on the books for a meeting on Saturday. Again, if you watch any Panthers games, you couldn't have felt real energized by what that defense was able to do. And if you are looking at the Seattle defense and how bad it was, if you're going to go with a DC as a head coach, you want somebody that's going to elevate this unit, because it's not like there's not good players on it. Right? There's absolutely dudes. There's all pros, there's pro bowlers. Like there are good players on this team that you can build with. And Panthers DC, that Panthers defense was horrendous. So now, obviously, time will tell. If they hire him, it's your coach. You got to hope that it pans out. But you're comparing these candidates against what Pete Carroll has been able to do. And I mean, I understand that you're going body of work, but even if you don't do full body of work, if you just look at the past 4 or 5 seasons, this is still a team that is in and around the playoffs. Were they winning the division? No, the Niners have pretty much locked that up over the last few years, but they've been a solid wild card contender. So if you're going to bring in guys that have losing records, like let's just call it what it is. We're looking at teams that we're not doing exceedingly well. And, so that I hope they don't. Hopefully they are biding their time and waiting for some of the teams that are still in the playoffs to be able to finish this interview process. Obviously the competition for this position goes way down. Sup, Chad? Competition for this goes way down because now these other teams have started to, really figure out, where they're headed. Right? They've started hiring guys. So now the only two open coaching jobs, head coaching, I should say, is Seattle and Washington. Right? Now, if you are, say, the Lions OC Ben Johnson, who I know is on their list, but he's still in the playoffs, so there's only so much you can do. But if you were that coach and you had the opportunity to either go to Seattle or Washington, I would go to Seattle. You have a winning culture that you're stepping into, right? You have a lot of players all over the roster. You have 3 great receivers, really 4. I mean, because Bobo, every time he's been on the field, has really shown out. You got 2 solid running backs. You do have a lot of questions at the offensive line. Absolutely, Rob. I'll take Ben Johnson also. And then, on defense, again, the secondary is solid. You have some nice pieces around the interior of it. They just don't have a complete defense. And, obviously you watched that get burned all year. Some of those secondary numbers were bad, but I don't really blame those so much on the secondary because your front 7 couldn't get home. It's tough to cover guys forever. Now, they do need to learn how to tackle. It is something that we've seen all season of throw a shoulder and don't wrap up. And as a defensive player, that irritates the hell out of me. So that one whoever comes in better figure out how to fix the defense because the talent is there. But I did hear it. I didn't see all the details about Tyler Boyd leaving, but I did hear about it. So it'll be interesting to see what it is comes of that. But so yeah, no, those ones like Ben Johnson, I really like the potential of that. If he's still around. The one that lost a little bit of steam that I was surprised about was Frank Smith. I thought they were gonna explore that a little bit further, especially with an offense that was, second in points, second in yards, 6th in rushing yards, right? So it's not like it was all because of your speed receivers, but let's be honest, Washington has some elite speed in the receiver position. So it's not like you would be coaching Tyreek and then now you have really slow guys and you got to try and figure out how to make that work. You're looking at guys like DK and JSN that are absolute burners on the outside. So again, that one seemed like it would have made sense, but it really hasn't caught any steam. I don't know why not, but so we'll see where that one goes. They have shown interest in the Ravens DC, Mike Macdonald. Obviously, that Ravens defense is elite. They're first as far as points allowed with only 280 points this season, which is amazing, especially in a league that is designed to score points, right? Like they have designed this to make it harder on defenses. They've designed it to put up 25 plus points a game. Like that's what the rules are set out to do at this point. And they've been able to minimize that. So that would be a huge upgrade if they can use that philosophy, because it's not like that defense is nothing but all pros, right? Like they're maximizing the talent on that roster. Now they got dudes. I'm not saying that, but it is a very well coached unit. They also have, they are one of the more penalized teams as well, similar to Seattle and of course the Cowboys. Those are all, teams that have over 100 penalties on the season. So, I mean, it's not that you'd be getting a huge upgrade in that way, but when it comes to third down percentage on defense, it would be a huge upgrade. They were 8th as far as third down percentage. And again, I know it has a lot to do with the dudes on the field, but coaching matters, right? And at the end of the day, the guys we have on our roster. So you would assume that a coach should be able to put them in a position to win. So if they were to really kind of go after Mike Macdonald, I would not mind that at all. That would be nice if they're sticking with the DC kind of idea. All right. So yeah, it's so that's just kind of some of the highlights. Unfortunately, as far as the good candidates, they really didn't have a ton of them on their list, and now really brings into question what is the direction that John Schneider is trying to take this team, because he has the helm, right? They gave him all the power. He's that dude. He gets to pick this coach, and really whatever step he makes from here will kind of define what he is as a GM when it comes to that. His ability to bring talent in the door has been impressive. Um, obviously when they first got here, they brought in a ton of talent. They've been able to sprinkle talent in through the middle. And then over the last couple of seasons, a couple of drafts, I should say, they've hit absolute home runs. So his ability to acquire talent has been exceptionally well. They're exceptionally good. Whether or not he can pick a coach, we're about to find out. And I hope as a fan, I hope he does. But we'll we'll see. We'll see. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the free agents that we have on our roster. Because believe it or not, even though we are over the cap, so there's going to be some cap casualties no matter what. There's 20 free agents on this team. And one of the ones that we're looking at first has to be Leonard Williams, because they gave up a second round, and I believe it was a fourth. I could be wrong. I know they gave up a couple of picks to go get him. They didn't pay him anything, right? They had his contract was picked up, but that's not going to be true moving forward, right? He is an unrestricted free agent, but you don't give up those kind of draft picks as a rental, right? You had to have had a plan to keep him in the house. And so if that's the case, you got to figure out what it is he wants to make. He's going to command a ton of money. So that is definitely, well, so that's the thing, Rob, is I think they need to sign him. Otherwise giving those draft picks away was pointless. Granted, they got him for free for the year, but it's not like it produced anything. They still had a not great defense, and the season came to a close without making it to the playoffs. So not exactly a great rental if you don't get anywhere with it. So I think they sign him. I think you have to sign him right now. When you look at guys like Bobby Wagner, right? Also an unrestricted free agent. Another guy I think you have to sign. He, was the most sure tackling guy on the entire defense, right? I believe he led the team in tackles. He is still top 5 in tackles as far as the linebacking unit, and, realistically, kind of across the league, just in total tackles. So some of that, I guess you can attribute to the fact that the defense couldn't get off the field. So maybe that's why he had more opportunities for tackles. But he's a sure tackler. He's smart. He helps command this defense. He's not gonna cost a ton to keep, right? He is an older player at this point. Everybody kind of keeps saying he's going to fall off, even though he hasn't. So I'm going to go with they re-sign Bobby Wagner, but then you're going to start to see some of these unrestricted free agents kind of drop off. One of those is Drew Lock. I think he's played his last snap in Seattle. I think they keep Geno because of the way his contract is. There's easy outs, but he's had good quarterback play. And, at the end of the day, he would be a great mentor for somebody that they're probably going to draft in this draft. They're going to have a decent pick, and it's a deep quarterback draft. Obviously, they're not getting the first 3 guys. Those guys will be off the board. But you could probably go get a Penix. You could probably get a Bo Nix. You could probably get one of those caliber guys towards the end of the first round, maybe with their second round pick. They might, those are potentials. So Drew Lock probably is one that, ends up off the roster, because if you're going to go get a guy, you have Geno, you let him mentor under Geno, and then, he's ready to go maybe later this year, maybe next year. There's not a huge push for it because Geno is still kind of a discount rate for a starting quarterback in the league. So Drew Lock probably no longer on the team after this. You have guard Phil Haynes. I think he played well enough that you keep him. Again, there's a lot of linemen that are on this list, and you only have so many draft picks, and they don't have any money in the cap. So some of these guys you're going to have to bring back, just because at the end of the day you're probably not going to spend a fortune to get them. I think you bring back Phil Haynes, Devin Bush, inside linebacker. You probably keep him. He played pretty well throughout the season. He was probably one of the better linebackers outside of Bobby Wagner. So you kind of have to keep that. Noah Fant, I really want them to keep Noah Fant. So this one is, I know they don't effectively use tight ends typically over the last decade, really, but you're going to have an entirely new coaching regime come through. And most other places use tight ends fairly well. Noah Fant is an absolute threat as a tight end. So if you can keep him, he's not going to be overly expensive, I wouldn't think. So if you can keep him with the new regime coming in, if they can draw up some stuff to use the tight ends a little bit more, would be huge. So I would like to see that. Jordan Brooks, another linebacker that I think ultimately they should keep. It would be nice to, he was probably the best tackler outside of Bobby Wagner out of the linebackers. So they probably bring him back. It really depends on what it is they're going to try and target during the draft this year. I didn't look at exactly what all of our draft picks are. As I recall, there's not a ton of them. I do think they have one in every round, but it's not like they have, a bunch of compensatory picks or anything like that. Like they have, their basic picks. So it would be surprised. I would be surprised if, if they make a ton of moves just because they don't have tons of draft capital and they don't have a lot of cap space. So a bunch of these free agents are probably coming back just because ultimately they'll be cheaper pickups. So I don't believe Mason Cole is a free agent. I don't think he is. I don't think he is. At least he wasn't on my list. So this list I got off of Sport Track. So sporttrack.com, you can see the list that I'm reading from. I didn't see him on that list. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything they reported is perfect. It just happened to be the list that I grabbed. So if you do happen to see him on there, let me know. But I didn't see him on this list as it sits. So then another guard, there's actually 3 guards that are all free agents, which, that can be a problem. Evan Brown is an unrestricted free agent. So Brown, I mean, again, there's only so many moves you can make. So does he end up making it? Probably. I could see him staying. You got Darrell Taylor, outside linebacker. He's a restricted free agent, so at least they'll be able to match whatever offer they want. Now, I don't know that it matters. They may try and do like a sign and trade or something like that. They may let him walk, but that one, I don't know if he did enough to make him want to pursue him if somebody wants to give him some real money. You have defensive end Mario Edwards, unrestricted free agent, and he probably is gone. I don't imagine they're going to bring him back. So, tough to say. Damian Lewis, guard, unrestricted free agent. That one he's probably gone as well. Again, they got to make up some room just because they're over the cap. So some of these guys, even if they would have liked to keep them, they probably can't. You got tight end Colby Parkinson, unrestricted free agent. I would bet that he's probably not going to be returning. But I think they might be looking to target a tight end in the draft, kind of mid rounds, to, again, get rid of some of the payroll here. DJ Dallas, running back, is a unrestricted free agent. And he's been a pivotal piece in this Seattle offense, especially because guys like Charbonnet and Walker have been hurt. And DJ Dallas, believe it or not, has been one of the more durable running backs in quite a long time for Seattle. Now, here's a stat that I've given before, but when it comes to starting running backs, they haven't had one make it without landing on IR since 2014. It was one of the last years with Marshawn Lynch. So I don't love the fact that he's probably going to be gone. He's been durable. He's super consistent. He can block. They're all things that Seattle likes to use, but they have cap space they have to create. And I think he might be a casualty of just cap needs. So DJ Dallas probably ends up not on the roster, despite the fact that he is one of those more consistent guys, and has been their punt returner. So kind of sad to see him go, but I would bet that he's probably not back. And Michael Jackson, cornerback, he is a restricted free agent, so they can at least match what somebody might offer him. I feel like they really need to bring him back. More because is he the starting guy? No, but when one of the starters goes down, or you end up with a situation where, they had Tariq Woolen, where he got benched a couple of different times because he wasn't making tackles. Michael Jackson's been able to step right in, and he plays good football. When you looked at it just before Witherspoon got here, you had Michael Jackson on the opposite end of, Woolen's rookie season, and Michael Jackson did the job, right? Like he's not elite, he's not the household name, but he's effective at what he does, and he plays tight enough coverage that a lot of balls ended up going towards the rookie last year that ended up as interceptions, right? So when you're playing tight coverage, they explore other spots. So I liked what I saw out of Michael Jackson. Again, he's not elite. He's not, your top flight guy that, you have to build around or anything like that. Like, he's not that guy. What he is he is a very good corner, and he gets the job done, right? He to me is a lot like the Jeremy Lane. He's not your first option, but when he's on the field, he does what he has to do. And he's opportunistic. So if the ball is close, he can make an interception. He can make plays on the ball. So I would like to see them keep him, just because they need some depth. And, we have real questions on, if Tariq Woolen can get it turned around and start making consistent tackles. Because I don't care if you can get an interception. If you can't tackle anybody, you're not going to intercept every ball. So hopefully they can bring him back. Again, he is a restricted free agent, which means he, Seattle will have the option to at least match whatever's being sent his way. So then we have tackle Jake Curran. He is a protected free agent. The rest of these all will be. So they're all protected free agents from here on. So again, it depends on what you can sign him for. If they can keep him for cheap, I wouldn't mind that. Defensive tackle Miles Adams, protected free agent. Unfortunately, our defensive line wasn't amazing, right? So there's some very real things that need to change. We also don't know what kind of defense we're going to run. So this new regime coming in, they may not like the 3-4. Not that they ran a true 3-4 anyway. It was always kind of a weird hybrid, just because they didn't have the personnel on the field to effectively run the 3-4. But we don't really know what this defensive alignment is going to look like moving forward. Is it going to remain a 3-4? Is the new staff going to put the 4-3 back in, which, let's be honest, they play better in? Tough to say. So if they are going to keep some of that, then, maybe you want to keep some of these, tackles and ends, because now you're going to be using them a little bit more, a little differently. So that being said, I don't think that one will stay. I always butcher this guy's last name. I'm not even going to try. He's a defensive end. Joshua O is what we're going to say. That one you probably let walk. Tight end Brady Russell, again, that's another one you're probably going to move on. Ty Okada is a safety. You probably move on from. Again, you're creating space. Now some of these guys again are cheap enough that as long as they aren't looking to up the money a ton, you do got to fill the roster. So there is some of that. Again, let me double check what the picking order is for Seattle, because I just don't remember offhand. Let's see, Seahawks draft picks. Yeah, so there's 7 draft picks. So yeah, I mean, there's only so many things you're going to be able to backfill through the draft, especially when you look at the later rounds. They do open up with the 16th overall pick, so that's about what I thought. The good thing about that is if you wanted to move into a quarterback, that is about right to get the 4th quarterback, which in this draft is probably going to be Penix. 16th is probably right about where he would go. I figured he would be kind of a mid to late first round. I think Bo Nix will be a real close to the top of the 2nd round. And I know, so many people were blaming a lot of this season on Geno and a lot of the season on Waldron, who isn't on the team anymore. He moved over to be the OC for the Bears. But, I blame so much of this season's offensive issues on just how beat up that offensive line was. And the biggest thing with that is we've seen how this has happened before. You looked at the Cardinals last year, the Rams last year, right? They had the exact same situation Seattle was dealing with this year, in the way that they didn't have the starting 5 they wanted until like week 16, 17 last year. And you watched both those teams get absolutely murdered all season. So then you look at the Seahawks this year, they lose both their tackles and a guard in the first half of the first game of the season, right, against the Rams. They were playing well up until halftime. And then you lose most of your offensive line, and obviously that the team fell apart from there. But after that, it was just this rotating cast of injuries. And of course, both tackles were on IR for half the season. So there was only so much success that was about to happen. And, especially for my buddy Rob, he was not a Waldron fan. A lot of people thought that his play calling was boring, uninventive. And so this is the question that I pose to you, because if you're looking at it as everybody's healthy, then I 100% agree. There was nothing special you were doing. But when you watch the film, they were running a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets, where a couple of those tight ends were just in to block. They were essentially just added linemen. A lot of times the running backs were just in there in run blocking. So now, in pass blocking. So now you're looking at, you got 2 receivers that can make plays. Well, there's only so much you can do. And even with that, Geno was still getting hit. So it's not even like those tight ends and running backs were actually giving him the pocket to throw from. He was still getting moved off his spot and hit. So, you can only blame so much on coaching at that point if you just don't have the personnel on the field. And similar to Geno, yeah, his numbers weren't quite as good as they were the year before, but he didn't have the protection that he had the year before. The year before, they had their desired offensive line front, right? So he had some time. Geno isn't the scramble around and make things happen. Like, he's not the Russ of old, right? Like, that's just not what he is. He can extend a play. He can be smart with the ball. He can be accurate. But if you got dudes in his lap, he's not going to make that spectacular play. He doesn't have that speed. He doesn't have that arm strength. So, there was a lot of Geno hate, but that's really not on Geno. If you are one of the highest pressure rate quarterbacks in the league, you're not going to have crazy success. And even with that, they were still in the top 10 for scoring points in the league. So they still found ways to get down the field. They didn't find ways to get in the end zone. So that was a major concern. Once the field kind of tightened up, that's where they really struggled. They settled for a lot of field goals, ended up biting him in a lot of games. So I get why you wanted to move on. I also wanted to move on. So it's not that I'm necessarily defending Waldron as he should have stayed, but what I'm saying is I understand why things went the way they did. So, that's just kind of, my 2 cents on that. But one of the cap casualties that I'd kind of like to see is, Jamal Adams. I know that if they get rid of him this year, it's still a big cap hit, but the problem is he's never healthy. And do you waste the cap that that you could potentially save, right? Like it's still going to be a cap hit, but you could potentially save some money. I don't know. I guess mostly because he's always hurt, it's tough to justify his spot on the roster. I forget exactly what the savings is. Let's see, Jamal Adams contract. I had it written down, but I don't have those notes in front of me. Let's see. And got some slow some slow internet here. Let's see. Yeah, it's not coming up. If you're in the comments, hey Rob, in fact, since you're watching, let me know what the cap hit is, because I can't get it to pop up. But I agree with you that I don't love where he's at on the field. Obviously, if he's rushing the quarterback, he's such an impact player. But the problem is he's listed as a safety. They kind of use him in this hybrid role, and he's not very good in coverage. He's not great at run stopping. He doesn't generally always wrap up. He will hit you hard. Like he will run downhill and he will blow you up. Like it's absolutely a thing. But so that's part of it. Like if they could get him in a spot where he was absolutely just going after the quarterback. Let's see. Let's throw this on the screen. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's if he remains on the roster, though. I forget what it is if he's cut, because I know if he's cut this year, it's not a huge savings. If he's cut next year, I think they save about half of that, if I remember right. But again, I don't have those numbers directly in front of me at the moment. But I would expect to see, depending on the defense that whoever comes in next wants to run, that'll really determine whether or not Jamal Adams is on this team, because you have good safeties already that are better in coverage than Jamal Adams. If you're converting back to a 4-3, then you don't really need to have a safety that isn't good at being a safety, right? I don't know why he's still a safety. Realistically, he's an outside linebacker. He is a great outside linebacker type of player for a 3-4 setup where they're essentially using him as a, in that scenario, they'd be using him as an extra D end, essentially a speed rusher from the outside. That's where he gets most of his best work done. Unfortunately, it really hasn't worked very well for the Seahawks because he's been hurt every year. I think he was kind of the main reason they went to a 3-4 was to use him in that capacity. Here we go. All right. Yeah. So if they move on from him. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess they could, I guess they could move on from him. Again, he just doesn't add a lot of value to the team currently, unfortunately. He never became what it is you thought he potentially could come. I didn't like the trade initially anyway. I thought they gave up too much for a guy that was, really kind of had a narrow skill set, hyper athletic, but narrow skill set. And, I felt like at the time it was more of a desperation play. They had a defense that really just wasn't very good and was continuing to get worse. They had kind of focused on the offensive side of the ball. They were starting to cater to that let Russ cook thing. And so they were just trying to make a splash on defense. So, I mean, in a way, I guess I kind of get it. I just didn't like the move based on how much they gave away to go get him. And then, unfortunately, after that first season, he just has never been healthy. Obviously, last season was a little bit better than the season before, where he played for, the first half of the first game or first quarter of first game. So, I mean, at least he was a little bit more available during 23 than he was during 22, but it still wasn't enough to justify how much they paid him and how much they gave away to go get him. But at the end of the day, you make the decisions you make, and, you move on from it if you can. So yeah, I mean, ultimately we'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to Seattle finally picking a coach so we can kind of figure out where it is we're headed. Because, now since Harbaugh's off the market, right? He lands at the Chargers. So you're no longer in that sweepstakes. Unless you're actively going to look at, either the Ravens DC or the Lions OC, you can probably, pull the trigger on what else you're going to do. And again, they've done a couple of these, second phone calls to these lower echelon guys that, man, it doesn't make you feel good about where they're headed. I really hope they're dragging their feet to give those two guys a chance. I guess we didn't go over Ben Johnson's numbers, but they're impressive, especially when you figure it's a team that Seattle has been able to beat. And so, we'll go over some of the numbers here, and we'll compare them to Seattle's, just because it kind of gives you an idea where Seattle's offense was versus where the Lions were. So when it comes to Ben Johnson's offense scoring, they put up 451 points, which is fifth in the league, which is great. Passing yards, 4,401, which is second. Rushing yards, 2,311, which was fifth. Touchdowns, 58, which is third. Turnovers, they were 14th with 23, so not horrible. Third down percentage, they were 10th at 41.5%. And the red zone percentage was 64%, which was third. So those are all great numbers. And when you look at roster to roster, there's a lot you can compare side to side. I would actually argue that Seattle may have the better receiving core. Do I think Goff is better than Geno? I mean, probably, right? But it's not like leaps and bounds better. So, yeah, well, I would really like them to explore that. So when you compare that to where Seattle was scoring, they put up 364 points, which was only 17th. So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that it was great. Most of that was because of down the stretch. They were actually a better scoring offense earlier in the year than where they finished. Passing yards, 4,167, which was 16th. Rushing yards, this one hurt. This had a lot to do with this offensive line. 1,580, which was 28th. So really not very good. 17 turnovers. So that was fifth. They were actually really good at protecting the football. Third down percentage was 23rd at only 36%. And I don't have the red zone percentage, but yeah, so I mean, it was just a lot of, there is a lot of room for improvement. And I guess when we're talking about the defensive side of the ball, this will let you know how bad the defense was. So in points allowed, 402. So that was 25th. Passing yards, they gave up 4,259, which is 22nd. Rushing yards, everybody could run on this team. 2,352, which was 31st. They got 38 sacks, which was 10th. So they were able to get home a fair amount of times. Third down percentage, horrendous at 40, just over 46%, which was 31st in the league. And then penalties, they were penalized as a team 111 times, which was 28th. So it just really wasn't a great year. I mean, obviously, you knew why people were getting fired. I was really surprised they fired Pete going into his last season of his contract, but I guess time will tell. We will see where it is we end up. Hopefully, by the time we have Hawk Talk next week, we have a new coach. We can kind of start to figure out what it is direction we are headed. Again, if you are in the Pacific Northwest for the games this weekend, I'm going to be watching the second game at the Linwood Buffalo Wild Wings. So if you're in the area, come on out, say hi, have a beer with us, and watch this Lions-Niners game. Man, that one's going to be an electric game for sure. I don't believe that the Niners deserve a 7.5 point edge in this game. The Lions have shown enough to me to think that they would be close. Unfortunately, I do think the Niners win this game. I don't want them to. If it was the game that I want to have happen, I would love to see the Lions win that battle. I don't think they do. I think they keep it close. So if you were betting on the spread, I would take the Lions points. If you're betting straight up on the money line, I'm taking the Niners. I think the Niners will be able to get it done. Most of which falls on the fact that Lions secondary just isn't that great. So again, if you're in the area, come out, hang out, it'd be fun. And of course, the earlier game, I got the Ravens beating up on KC pretty good. KC's offense isn't great. Their defense is definitely one of the better defenses they've had, but I'm going to go with the Ravens to do some work, probably beat them by 10. So I believe the line was 4.5, 4 or 4.5, something like that. In either scenario, the Ravens definitely cover that. And then, of course, if you are here in the Northwest as well, come out to Apex. We're going to be there for the local MMA fights. So that happens Saturday night at Apex Center right there in downtown Everett. Be sure to come out. It should be a lot of fun. They got, if you haven't been there, it is a graffiti art gallery, one of the largest collections in the U.S. So be sure to check that out. And of course, one of the fighters will be right from one of the fighters in the ring this weekend will be from our very own Wild Style Gym right there in Snohomish. Great group there. Obviously, the fighters are great. The owners are great. So come out, check it out. It is available on pay-per-view as well. So if you aren't in the area, you would be able to see the fights. And but yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's an awesome venue. There are some VIP tickets still available, I believe. There's also some general admission, I believe, as well. They have some screens around. They got multiple bars. They got the graffiti art all around. Pretty cool venue. Again, come out either Sunday for the games or Saturday night for the fights. Obviously, I'm in and around sports all the time. So usually at some of these sporting events, you can find me. Other than that, we are going to let you get back to your Friday and look forward to seeing some of you guys on Sunday for the championship game at Wild Wings. And yeah, other than that, thanks for tuning in. If you are on Roku, be sure to hang out in the next hour for the programming here. If you are on my channel, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps me bring my content to you. Even a share would be helpful. So other than that, we will sign off. Take it easy, guys.